creditors or the borrowers?
In this video, we want to share to you the essence of utang, or in the realm of Philippine government, the public debt.
People take out loans to buy houses, cars, to pay for schools, and all sort of things. Companies also borrow and government do it too. When government borrows, it's called public debt or sovereign debt. So, ano nga bang public debt? In simplest way, ito ang utang ng gobyerno sa loob o sa labas ng bansa. Ito ay nangyayari dahil ang kita ng bansa ay kulang para i-finance ang mga government project, the budget deficit. Government raise this money by issuing bonds and then selling them to the public with a guarantee that they will pay them back. It is the total amount of money that is loaned to the public by the government to meet the development fund. The public debt is also owned by lenders within the country.
By handing out government bonds and bills, the government can create public debt. Just like people, countries need money to buy or build up stuff that their income, mostly revenues, won't entirely pay for.
So, as we dissect the meaning of public debt, now let's talk about the GDP or the Gross Domestic Product. Ang Gross Domestic Product ay ang kabuuang value ng isang bansa.
Ang debt-GDP ratio ay ang utang over sa overall value ng bansa. The lowest price is better. According to the data, the national government's debt-to-GDP ratio as of end third quarter 2023 at 60.2%, mas mababa kumpara sa 63.7% noong mga nakaraang taon.
What are the roles of public debt?
First, smoothing out tax rates.
Second, macroeconomic stabilization.
Third, financing war or other emergency expenditures.
Fourth, meeting a part of current expenditures for developing human capital or increasing productivity.
Fifth, remunerative capital formation government by lending and for equity investments.
And last, filling saving investment gap.
Public debt can have both negative and positive effects on people. On one hand, public debt can be used to fund government programs and investments in social welfare, infrastructure, and economic development.
Naglilid ito para mag-improve ang standards ng kabuhayan, better access to education and healthcare, and increase economic growth and employment opportunities.
On the other hand, excessive public debt can lead to higher interest payments, which pwedeng makonsume ang isang malaking bahagi ng budget ng gobyerno, which can make it difficult to fund other public services such as education and healthcare na alam naman nating lahat ay importante sa kabuhayan ng isang tao.
Additionally, public debt can lead to increased borrowing costs, which can make it more expensive for individuals and businesses to borrow money. This can make it more difficult for people to purchase homes, start businesses, or obtain financing for their education or other expenses. Ang impact ng public debt sa mga tao ay depende sa level ng utang, how it is spent, and the economic and political context in which it is applied. It is important for policymakers to balance the needs to the fund's important government program with the need of managed debt level in the responsible and sustainable way. Ano nga ba mga types ng public debt?
Internal and external debt. The government's borrowing within the country is known as internal debt. Likewise, domestic borrowing meaning ito yung mga utang sa loob ng bansa.
As of this year's current data, ang Pilipinas ay mayroong utang na 14.50 trillion pesos. 69.09% of the total debt is made up of domestic borrowings, while foreign borrowings made up 30.91%.
The government can borrow this debt from sources like banks, individuals, business firms, and other internal sources.
On the other hand, the government's borrowing from abroad or international is known as external debt, meaning ito yung mga utang ng gobyerno sa labas ng bansa. These types of debts contribute to the development programs. A few of the sources are bilateral borrowings, multilateral borrowings, loans from the Asian Development Bank, World Bank, etc. etc.
Productive and unproductive debt. If the loan is financed for projects that will bring revenue to the government, is known as productive debt. They are self-liquidating in nature. For example, irrigation, power project, infrastructure, and etc. When the loans are a net burden on the community, they are known as unproductive debt. In this case, the government charges additional taxation for service and repayment. Compulsory
Voluntary debt.
loans that are raised due to government's borrowing from the public by using coercive methods are known as compulsory debt. For example, the taxes paid by the public.
The members of the public institutions, like commercial banks, can subscribe to the securities issued by the government notes, which is known as voluntary debt.
Redeemable and irredeemable debt. The debt the government repays after the fixed period is known as redeemable debt. To sell securities to the public, the government borrows money from them. The interest on this debt is paid irregularly. The debt that has no promise date or for payment by the government is known as irredeemable debt. Therefore, the interest paid may be irregular, but such borrowings are not reported by the government.
Funded and unfunded debt. Funded debt is in fact a long-term debt exceeding the duration of at least a year. It comprises of securities which are marketable in the stock exchange. Funded debt in its proper sense is, however, an obligation to pay a fixed sum of interest, subject to an option of the government to repay the principal. In such debt, the creditor bondholder has no right to anything except the interest. Unfunded debt, on the other hand, are for a comparatively short duration. They are generally redeemable within a year. Unfunded debts are, thus, incurred always in anticipation of public revenue, a temporary measure to meet current needs.
Short-term, medium-term, and long-term debt. Short-term debt, money that has to be paid back to a lender in a year or less. Medium-term debt, money that must be paid back between 2 to 10 years after the money is borrowed. Long-term debt, money that does not have to be paid for at least a year after it is borrowed.
Though it may seem bad, but public debt actually has some advantages. 1. Extra funds for the country. Public debt is one of the ways for a country to get extra funds for economic development. This way, a country can plan and undergo bigger projects that can aid its development.
Access to investors. The concept of public debt gives room for investors to invest in countries because it involves the governments, thereby giving them a sense of security. Economic growth. When the money is used correctly, public debt can improve the standard of living in a country, which will further lead to economic stability and growth.
Despite having some advantages, public debt can also have a negative effect on a country, right? 1. Economic recession. Public debt can cause an economic recession when not properly managed. A country in huge debt will barely have enough to meet up with the rising demands of governance.
2. Loss of credibility. When a government cannot pay its debt, it begins to lose trust and credibility and will have a hard time collecting loans subsequently, either locally or internationally.
Loss of investors. A huge public debt can deter investors from investing in the country. It also amounts to higher interest rates for subsequent loans and transactions. Loss of assets. When a country cannot repay its debt, it can lead to the loss of government assets locally and internationally.
Both creditors and borrowers receives an equal positive outcome in a subtle ways. In summary, public debt or utang is vital for financing government projects and addressing budget deficits. The debt to GDP ratio reflects a country's economic health. While public debt attracts investors and funds essential programs, it can lead to economic challenges and loss of credibility if not managed wisely.
Understanding various debt types and duration is crucial. Striking a balance between leveraging debt for development and avoiding excessive is essential for nation's long-term prosperity.
Public finance is an essential aspect of any economy that determines the level of public services, the pace of economic development, and the overall well-being of its citizens. Public debt is an important topic that affects everyone, from individuals to governments. Learning about it can help individuals make informed decisions, understand economic and political issues, and pursue careers in economic fields. So viewers, let me ask you, did you learn something?
Public obligation. Public.
Ate mo?